too, and then we'll call people up soon as well, okay? Okay, awesome. Well, people, as you're joining in, please introduce yourself in the chat. If you don't know me, my name is Floyd Jones. I don't know. Can you hear some feedback? Are you guys hearing feedback or is it good on your end?
Yeah,
It's
good
good?
now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you guys are able to use the chat, please let us know and comment in that chat. But my name is Floyd Jones. I oversee an organization called Back Black, and we support Black-led organizations with funding as well. Last year, we helped raise $1.3 million for 770 Black-led organizations across the U.S., and we just launched again today, thankfully, for Black Philanthropy Month. I also am on the Black Philanthropy on the Global Council. And I love Meet-It. I love the work. I love what you all are doing. And for anybody who might be joining late, Patricia and Nyasha, would you mind reintroducing yourselves?
Sure. Go, Nyasha. Go, Nyasha.
Well, I'm Nyasha Njela. I'm based in South Africa, Cape Town. I am with an organization called Revolutionize International. Happy to be here.
Same with me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Patricia Hamzai. I'm co-founder of something called Black Funding Network. We're an intentional collective giving, well, I call it a giving circle that supports very small Black-led grassroots community organizations here in the UK. And I hope to reach Floyd's targets, and I'm going to follow you. I'm going to meet up with you, Floyd. You're going to give me some wisdom. The other thing I did, I'm part of, was we did some important research into Black philanthropy in Britain, which has informed some of our thinking about what we can and cannot do.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Perfect. I also just see, please forgive me if I say your name incorrectly. Hopefully you'll come on stage and correct me, but I think it's Bailey. Welcome from Scotland. I love that. And y'all, if the chat is working, my brother Marcus, good to see you. If that chat is working, please let us know where you're calling from and your organization as well. This call is all about, this session in particular is all about the many ways philanthropy manifests in Black communities. And one of the things that I love that you spoke about, Patricia, was community. And I kind of want to touch on that, what you just talked about in a little bit, and dive in when you talked about the loneliness at times that you can feel in doing this work. And I know that I felt that way largely when I was getting started in being a frontline fundraiser and doing this work, and then especially leaning into Black philanthropy and realizing how marginalizing it can be at times. And so I'd love to hear, I don't want to start on a low note, but I'd love to hear about your journey in that process and what it's been like being able to almost have to trailblaze in many ways and fight in a way to be seen.
So I wouldn't say trailblaze, because this journey has brought to me many people of like-minded souls. So in that sense, and that's the key, being out there enough that you find those like-minded souls. Because as the earlier speaker in the main session said, the siloing that we get, the divide and conquer that we get is powerful. So even I work a lot in social and the impact investment space generally as a professional part of my life. And any of the sort of Black advocates, the program managers, even the grant makers, people who have even the authority to make grants, they're like, there's one in a group, but they are just, everyone is like on their own. And when I do meet them and we talk, and we have informal, there's a people of color and social investment group that gets together, we try to share our experiences, but it's difficult to make the changes. That's the key thing. And again, that's just going back to what I said before, the more we are congregated, the more power, I'm going to use the word power, and influence we can wield. Right. The divide and conquer means that, that's what has taken us this long to get to where we need to be. So.
And Nyasha, did I say that properly?
Very well.
Perfect. Talk to me a little bit about your experience in navigating the space. Do you have a lot of people who are in the work with you, or is it completely different on your side of the world?
I think from a professional point of view, it is, we would say that fundraising and this space has not necessarily been a space where Black people have been in, particularly in South Africa. Up and coming now, you've got people that are coming up now. I was very fortunate in this particular environment where the first place that I entered, I had the opportunity to kind of grab the learnings. And I'm a fundraising geek, so any opportunity to learn. And then also from there, I'm also a culture geek. I just want to learn about other cultures as well and just kind of grab onto as much as I can. But one of the things that I found is that as I was going up and becoming that fundraising director, it was lonely at that particular space as a Black person, because everyone else that you're with in the room does not have the same experience as you, and they're fundraising for Black organizations, which is the most interesting thing. So when you're coming into a conversation, you're talking about this is what we need, this is what organizations need at the moment. They don't need you to take pictures. One of the most the things that I say when I do master classes is when people take stories from the field, there's nothing, when you're looking for empowering images and things like that, there's nothing empowering about a young girl holding a 20-liter bucket on their head and skipping and smiling. That's not empowering. It's not tell the truth about what is happening in society and everything. So those kind of conversations, I always found them quite difficult to have because you're not coming from the same space. So that space of being lonely was there. We're trying to change the landscape a lot more, but it's difficult. It's difficult because there's always the argument around the people that are giving are not Black. And yet you can say that the people that are giving are Black, so I understand who they are. So it's a mind shift, and decolonizing aid, decolonizing fundraising, decolonizing philanthropy. It will take some time for us, and it's a mind shift on both sides, 100%. On everyone's side.
100%. I love that you said, I always say, how do you see the people you serve? How do you see the people that you serve? Is it a power differential? And also, are we walking in with a savior complex, right? And I think in a lot of times in philanthropy, it could be have the understanding that, oh, the only people who can be the savior look a specific way, right? And I think that we don't talk about the power dynamics that come with philanthropy, because philanthropy a lot of times revolves around money, right? And so money has its own power dynamics that we don't talk about, right? So 100%, people are coming in with so many different layers to the conversation, and that's what keeps us entrenched. That's what keeps us down, and that's what says, oh, people like me do things like this, and if you don't fit my criteria, then you must not belong. Right? And that's what keeps us in the place that we are today. Well, this whole session is all about flexible philanthropy. So I want to lean into that. We know that Black communities are amongst the most philanthropic in the world. We know that we give the most, whether it be through, our religious setting, or, in America, we call it the fish fry, right? Like we know that there are many different settings in which we're giving. But I know that there's also the way that we capture philanthropy and talk about it and report on it could be different, and it leaves things missed, right? It leaves people out, right? So I want to talk a little bit about how are we seeing the different ways of flexible philanthropy, whether it be through volunteerism, whether it be through collective giving and giving circles? What has been going, what are like the trends in your various contexts that you guys are seeing arise? And then my hope is that people can take away, oh, maybe we need to try this with our organization.
Coming from my side, I think innovation has brought in a lot of things when it comes to giving and the way that we collect resources, the way that we collect money. For instance, if we're talking about giving circles, or if we're talking about mass giving, we've always had Ubuntu. We've always had this idea of grocery circles where your parents, they put money together, buy in bulk, and then you've got enough groceries for the whole year or things like that. And then that's the way that philanthropy has come about. And then with technology, there's also things that have come in which are like mobile money in Africa, for instance, because it's not easy to carry a lot of money around, because sometimes you've got some countries where it's like a bottle of beer is 100,000, whatever the currency is, and you can't be carrying that around. So there's mobile money that is used. But what I found is that a lot of nonprofits, they don't take that switch of, we could use this as a way to collect funding into our organization. So when they come in and talk about crowdfunding, we're still using the same crowdfunding platforms. The same platforms that we see on the northern side, in the northern hemisphere. Instead of us looking at actually at the grassroots level, we're all going in. If I need to pay money for groceries with my mother, I just send her mobile money. I don't need the physical cash. So that shift is taking longer to come up, but there are some success stories that are coming up on our side where we can see that the innovation that's coming up and technology that's coming up, people in our spaces are starting to use that a little bit more.
That is so good. I remember when I started using Venmo for fundraising, and with the organization that I was working with at the time, we were one of the first nonprofits who were able to actually get, and utilize Venmo in the States. And we ended up raising, $200,000+ because people were just giving it on the spot because it was easy. I can Venmo you $10. I can Venmo you $20. I can, you know what I mean? Right away in the active giving, right? And so it's really about being able to catch up and meet people where they're at, meet your people where they're at. Exactly, Marcus. Don't tell your people how they need to give. Let them tell you. Let them show up and be your community member, right? Patricia, tell us about what are the different, nuances and flexible philanthropy that you're seeing in your context? How are people giving?
So, as I said earlier, there has been a real shift, right, since COVID and George Floyd. There has been a more of a focus, as particularly from our communities here, about, we have to do something, we must do more, and to that end, there have been new entities created. There's, you may know about, it's called the Baobab Foundation. They actually received some 8 million pounds from a giver here called Lankelly Chase is closing itself down because they just don't feel that they are advancing much. So they gave 8 million of their endowment to Baobab to basically, and Baobab is totally focused on racial equity and social justice. So that, that's an important development. And they're trying to create a model. I'm a community member of their community, and they're trying to create a model that is very democratic, very flat, very very accessible to all kinds of Black-led organizations looking for support. And they're still developing their model, but the intention is there. So, and then there are other foundations that have been set up, trusts that have been set up, trying to address Mission 44. I think you may know from Ms. Hamilton, and there's several different funding bodies of people who would be seen as the more traditional philanthropists, right? As Black leaders, but more traditional philanthropists. They are very successful, have accumulated a great deal of wealth, and they have a desire to make sure that they can channel that wealth to where they see the need is in society. So, and that's great. We're seeing more of that. And I think that's quite important. But what I see in terms of where, and what I'm hoping to galvanize is more the kind of grassroots giving, basically. Again, I go back to those 4 million of Black and mixed heritage people in this country. We could do a lot if we just understood how powerful our collective voices, intentionality could be. And for me, one of the most important things that happened we do 2 crowdfunding events a year. We invite people into a room or on Zoom, and people just donate, however much they had. But we had people donating 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds. And then I had this amazing elder who opened up her pocketbook and gave us 20 pounds, right? 20 pounds. There were other people in the room saying, this matters to me. This organization who's just presented to us matters to me because my sister, my brother is dealing with those issues. I'm going to give you 50 pounds, etc. So, and that was the joy in the room, right? That was the sense of purpose. And actually that 20 pounds, right, became as important, right? To the effort, the support that was being given, that became so important because she gave totally as an elder, in a room, probably not something she was used to doing in that sense, but she felt compelled to offer her support. And I thought, yeah, that's for me, that's where I'm investing my time and energy.
100%. I always say, give your best, right? If everybody just does their best, imagine what the world would look like. I'm not asking you to give, but he's given or she's given or they're given down the street. Do what you can do and imagine what our world would look like, right? I have a question, I hate to make it political, but we see a lot of campaigns arising in the US. We won't talk on specific ones, but we're also seeing a lot of momentum and people signing up to volunteer and all those different things. How do organizations, especially in your various contexts, how do we tap into that? Because one thing that I'm also seeing is a lot of times we only think, I always say, if the dollar or if the donation is all you want, then the donation is all you're going to get. If the donation is all that you want, then the donation is all that you will get. But you don't want just the donation. You want to build for believers of your organization, right? And if you have believers, then believers are going to move your organization to breakthrough, right? So how do you feel like organizations can think through that and really expand their view of philanthropy in terms of getting in more volunteers and mobilizing more volunteers?
Maybe I'll jump in. So again, when I talk about having the joy of this collective, right, that it comes from, we have the opportunity to showcase, different organizations. And for me, it's not the money we raise. I'm happy that we raise the money and they get the money, whatever. But for me, it's those organizations showcasing the work that they do, because these are organizations that are at the coalface of our communities, right? They are working with diagnosing young people with neurodiversity so they don't get excluded from schools. They are working on mental health support. They are, so many things. And all of a sudden they are able to share what their work is about. And people are going, I didn't know that, right? I did not know that was something, right? And all of a sudden, that's where the sort of investment in this effort comes from, because people are all of a sudden realizing, I live in my little cocoon, I'm going about my life in this way, and all of a sudden you're thrown into what the lived experience of so many other people are, and that's where the investment comes from.
One thing that I want everyone to take away from what Patricia just said is the idea of exposing the story, right? Letting people know what the actual story is, and get that way people can feel compelled. You know what I mean? If you're not actually sharing those stories, if you're not sharing the work, if you're not sharing people are actually going through their lived experience, how can you get greater collaboration? How can you actually get people to walk with you in the process? So I love that.
I think that we have to do a lot of work around purpose and meeting the purpose of people that are around us as well. As organizations, if we're very, very clear on what our purpose is, we then get a lot of believers. Because the biggest market that's out there is the market of belief. People want to believe in something.
You better speak.
People want to see that there's this greater thing that is out there. And us as a collective, we've come out of different things, colonialism, slavery. We've come out of it because we've believed that we're not just doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for the next generation. There's no one that went through emancipation thinking that, okay, they knew maybe I might not make it, but I'm going to try to make it because my future, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren need to be emancipated. They need to be out of this. And I believe I can do it. We fought wars in Africa because we had this bigger belief. And so when we think about philanthropy and when we think about the organizations that we're coming out of, when we think about the organizations that we lead, those Black organizations, let's be purposeful. Let's be purposeful. Then we create volunteers. Then we create the donations that come in. We create a movement. We create there are lots of movements. And where do those movements come from? They come from a sense of purpose.
Yes.
We want to do something. And everyone is itching to do something.
I love that. And I always say alignment determines your assignment. When you get aligned, everyone else can get in line, right? I love that. I want to talk quickly about partnerships, and then I want to open it up for other people to ask any questions that they might have. So how can established philanthropic organizations, and I use the word established loosely, come on somebody, but how can organizations who've been around or more resourced organizations and donors better support and collaborate with community-led projects in the Black communities? Because one thing that we see and one thing that I do a lot in my work is I love corporate partnerships. I've raised millions of dollars in corporate partnerships and all the organizations that I worked for, every single grassroots organization that I worked for, I was the first full-time employee. I was the first fundraiser. My budget was my salary was covered by the chairman, right? But I was able to bring in bigger and larger corporate partnerships. And that's something I see very lacking in a lot of the communities that I work, a lot of the Black communities that I work with. So I'd love to hear from you all who've been able to do things like this. What have you been able to do? What strategy have you been able to employ? And what can people take away as well from that when working with bigger partners?
So we're a really baby organization, so I hope to reach your heights, Floyd. But we do have some corporate partners. We have and other mainstream funders like mainstream trusts and foundations who are supporting us. And I'm so grateful for that. And they've been very encouraged and encouraging from the beginning. So I don't want to take anything away from that. And we are very focused on trying to build our membership and our sources from some of those established funders as well. However, there is a noticeable, and I think it's the same in the United States, of I'm not going to say a complete reversal of the focus on racial equity and social justice that we had experienced since 2020. There's a slowing down. There's a we've done that, tick that box. Let's move on to the other needs of society, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to be really vigilant in that. Also, because what I just know, and it's true in history, the comment on C.J. Walker as well, is that when we, as Black people, as Black communities, we give to support all, right? I mean, that's partly our ethos, right? We somehow manage to kind of make it good for everyone else as we are making it good for ourselves, And unfortunately, and that's sometimes, again, we're seeing that sort of chill happening here, which is a little bit worrying.
I 100% feel that, especially with campaigns like, I mentioned the Back Black that I helped to lead. We rely on our corporate partners. And so you don't want your organization to swing when the marketing budget swings, right? And that's why I love what Nyasha was talking about in terms of purpose. You want to find purpose-aligned partners, right? You want to find people who are not just with you when media tells you to be with you. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to just be here when it's hot. You don't want fast food fundraising. You want people who are in it to build a future with you. You want people who are in it for the long haul with you, right? What is it like in your context, Nyasha?
Our context is a little bit different in the sense that it's legislated. So the history of South Africa coming from apartheid and it's a very young country, it's only 30 years. So the pendulum is still very far from moving in the right direction. So there is a piece of legislation called broad-based Black economic empowerment. And with that, corporates are actually compelled to spend on Black communities of color within South Africa, those that were previously disadvantaged. And it's legislated to a point where there are certain percentages of their net profit after tax that they're supposed to give to nonprofit organizations for the benefit of Black people. So it's not just giving to a nonprofit for the sake of giving to a nonprofit, but it's for the benefit of Black people, people that were previously disadvantaged. So it tends to be a little bit different. But what I've seen, and one of the things that Marcus has also written here, is the change in the corporate landscape is that the face in CSR has changed, which means it opens up opportunities to build relationships with people that understand contexts, with people. There are more Black people who are CSR directors, CSR managers now in South Africa, meaning that if you enter into a room and you're talking about a grassroots level project, they understand, they get it quite quickly. They understand, and they understand what they need to do and how much they need to give towards that. That has changed. Where we would have questions in the past around, well, we need you to report on this type of impact and that type of impact. We've seen that changing slightly because the face of CSR in the corporate, on the corporate side, is changing. So there's a better understanding now.
Love that. I love that. Having the people in power, you know what I'm saying? Having the people who understand hold the keys or the purse strings, right? I love that. We have about 15 minutes left, and I would love to open it up to anybody in the audience. I know when we come to a lot of these conferences, you can just be sitting, but I'm come on with community-based, and we're talking about the future of fundraising. So I'd love to open it up to you. If you have a specific question regarding flexible philanthropy, regarding how to bring nuance and bring innovation into your organization, regarding how to mobilize your community for fundraising, there should be a blue box at the top right of your screen that you can hit, and that will enable you to come on stage, and we can have a question from there. Does anybody feel brave enough to come on up? We don't bite, I promise. And while they're doing that, I'd love to hear from you all now that it is Black Philanthropy Month. And by the way, y'all, feel free to chime in and come in at any time, okay? With Black Philanthropy Month happening, and it being this global movement, and it's continuing to grow in the vernacular, in the philanthropic landscape, what are some things that you guys are seeing in your organizations and also in your communities that's helping to push this forward and something to be in the mainstream, right? Like, we see these amazing days like Giving Tuesday and all that different stuff. What new and innovative things can be done to continue to push things like Black Philanthropy Month forward and giving in this context? Patricia, you want to start? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, first of all, I have to be honest with you, and I've tried to check it out with people I know. Black Philanthropy Month is not necessarily hit the shores of the UK very much. I only know it in the US context. And that's probably our biggest problem here, is almost all concepts around Black philanthropy and, is very much seen through a US prism. And everybody says, oh yeah, in America they do that all the time. They're used to it. They have enough philanthropists to make a difference. And it's not, it doesn't work here. It doesn't work here. So that's a little bit of a battle that we have to get it. Yeah. So I'm happy to take up the banner and fly it higher.
No, I mean, that's really interesting. And I also think it's not, we do have a lot of those racial contexts and a lot of those, lines that can be blurred. And it could easily be the need for people to raise that banner and say, hey, we need to do something like this. But the need is everywhere. It's just about who's talking about it, right? And how are we bringing it to the forefront? I love that. And I think you said something similar in the call, Nyasha. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. I think from my side, when it comes to Black Philanthropy Month, I think what I can equate it to here in South Africa is Nelson Mandela Day. So we have a day dedicated to celebrating Nelson Mandela. And it is actually based on the time that he gave within his life towards fighting for freedom, which was 67 years. So each person is actually asked to kind of bring in that spirit, and you dedicate 67 minutes of activism. And you do that in several different organizations, different nonprofit organizations. That does bring people together quite a bit. But on the nonprofit side now, when I look at it, there's a love-hate relationship around that day because there's also the commercialization of it. So there's always this, and I don't know whether it's the same thing that you guys see when you look at Black Philanthropy Month, where people jump on the bandwagon and they want to quote to say, like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, take a lot of pictures, and then after that, everything is just falls flat. No relationship. And then we wait until the next year again, and they come back again. It isn't a continuous relationship. And we're finding that a lot when it comes to these kind of things as well. When it comes to Nelson Mandela Day, when it comes to what we call Youth Day, which follows the massacre of thousands of young South Africans who were fighting during apartheid, school-going age. So those days, they set for people to celebrate and bring in the activism, bring in the volunteering, bring in the money into organizations, but they've now been commercialized.
That's a word. Brother Marcus.
Hello, good morning. Enjoying this conversation. I mean, immensely. I'm in Houston, Texas. And here we had an organization started, I'm guessing maybe about a year ago, called Black Impact Houston. Brandy Brown leads it, and it is for Black-led nonprofits to kind of come together and get to know each other and collaborate, and had some really good things. We have the Greater Houston Community Foundation that's kind of taken on the organization and supporting, and the Greater Community Foundation has, it's where high net worth folks have their wills, their trust and things in there. So they pulled Black Impact Houston in. And so to be able to be a part of that and present to their donors, so they become aware of who we are, who the Black-led organizations are in the city of Houston. And also doing different giving days. So it's just not Giving Tuesday in December.
Right.
We did one for Juneteenth. Texas is Juneteenth. Everybody gets to celebrate it, but it's Texas. And thank you to our late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Final ceremony is today. Who made it a national holiday? That we did a Giving Tuesday on that to raise funds for the Black-led organization. So that's something that we're doing different here in Houston.
I really want to highlight that. I love Brandy. I love the work that y'all are doing with Black Impact Houston. I literally just texted her last night. I was like, we need to connect. I have more opportunities.
She's got summer camp.
I know. But I want everyone to hear this idea of leveraging power, right? People who have power or have a platform or whatever you have, how do you use what you have to give, right? Like, that's what philanthropy is all about. Right. And it's not even just about your money. Right. Whenever I'm building a board, I always tell people, okay, hey, do you have PR connections? Do you have connections to XY, another legal counsel? Right. Like, how do you use what you have? Because we need everybody. Right.
And everybody forgets who they know, Floyd. That's a reminder. We forget who we know because that's our friend. And you forget who that friend is and what they do for a living, or the lady who sits next to you in the pew on Sunday that you've known for 20 years, or your mom's best friend, or the person that you went to college with. You forget who they are, that they own certain things, that they are vice presidents, directors, the executive assistant to the CEO. And so we forget our network. And it's just one of those things that sometimes, even as fundraisers, we have to be reminded of that.
I have a question for you, Marcus, that Nyasha just brought up. How do we go beyond things like the commercialization of a Juneteenth? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was out in the park in Brooklyn, okay? I was with HBO and I was doing my little Dougie, okay? I'm not gonna lie, we was out there. But how do we go beyond just the commercialization of these big catalytic days and these big catalytic moments so that way the support is sustained? What are some thoughts that you have and what have you been able to do?
Well, first, people need to understand what Juneteenth is.
Right.
That is not the day that slaves were freed. Let's just get that very clear. That is the day that in Texas, the slaves found out 3 years later and that wasn't the last. There were still slaves even after that that didn't know that it was happening. But how can we get past it? It's an education. It goes to education. It goes to making sure that you, I don't know how to even say it, because in Texas, and in Florida, other states, just getting back to what we're not taught, and continuing to be dismantled and taking things out so that you don't know your history, you don't know who you are and where you come from. So if you don't have that in the home, you don't have that foundation. That's a hard question, Floyd. How do you get past the commercialization? Because it's like it's ingrained in us, the whole thing about what's important and how we should acknowledge things. It's too early for that.
If I can come in, I think this is just my personal opinion. Because it really is something that I love it when you said that educating people, like education is so important, really understanding what the day is about. And for me, it's almost one of those things where honoring something, it has to mean something to you. And if it means something to you, then we need to be the ones that drive and say to people, you know what, you want to commercialize this, you want to put it out there, but actually, do you understand what the meaning of it is? Do you understand what this means? If you do it this way, then you're honoring my people. You're honoring who I am. Because any other place, any other thing that is celebrated out there, I don't want to name the things, different things that are celebrated out there, atrocities that are celebrated out there. They're not commercial, but you find Black people's atrocities are commercialized. Why? Because people are honoring our history, our pain, what that means to us.
Because Black pain sells, right?
Everything that we do sells. Our culture, everything is taken and co-opted. So, yeah.
Come on, Zamani. Bring it back. Go ahead. What you gotta say? I love it.
Greetings, everyone. I just actually thoroughly enjoyed this. So if I sound nervous, it's just because there's so much stuff to say. I want to say all of it one time, but you can't, But I'm actually going to attempt to answer the question you just asked, Floyd, about how we do this. So I kind of think about this like how we think about Black History Month. Or I used to say that, we're Black 365 and all of this kind of something. All right,
McDonald's.
And now that's true. But how I see it now, because I have children around me. So how I see it now is, okay, we're Black 365. But when Black History Month comes, it's an opportunity to just elevate the celebration that we've been doing, the 364, So I think with meaning to say that we just embed it. So for example, we practice Kwanzaa, but we don't. So we highlight Kwanzaa during the 26th to January 1st, but the principles of Kwanzaa, we live them every day in how we do and what we do. I run an organization. I don't talk about it. I just embed it into the core. So everything that we do, when you talk about dignity, manners, respect, all that stuff, it's embedded into the actual how we live and breathe in the organization. And then on top of that, everything else becomes a highlight. So if we've decided to embed, manners and respect into when we come in and have our sessions, if we have elders coming through, manners and respect first, like it's just a I look at it as how we do it is just embedding it into the core of how we actually live and breathe. And it forces you to actually have to think about how you actually do that. You know, what does that actually look like? If you're going to have manners and respect, what does that look like in your everyday? So I live in a building. If I'm coming into the building and I see some elders or I see somebody struggling with groceries, if there's only one of you, well, now there's two. And I'm not asking, we're just doing it. So I think for me, like if we're talking about how do we do that, I just say embed it completely in what you're doing, and then highlight it a little bit later on.
AKA live your values.
That's
and I think that was a really good way to end this and put a bow on it, because we just got the note, but I love that. Live your values.
Yeah.
I think that's also the difference between asking someone for a one-time sponsorship and saying, like, hey, can you actually do a multi-year commitment? Like, if you really want to support us, I want you to help fund every day after Juneteenth too. You know what I'm saying?
Educate them about everything up until that point, making sure that they understand what it is that they are supporting and why.
Exactly.
And then all of the other things, the great things that our organizations do that sometimes we forget. We need to make sure that we focus on it all versus just the one.
I love that. I love that. Really quick, how can people stay in contact with you? I want to hear about Zamani and Marcus as well, and as well as Patricia and Yasha. How can people stay in contact with you? LinkedIn, what's the best way?
LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
I'll put it in the main chat, because since we got to hop back in there to redo it so everybody can. It's easy. It's linked to Marcus Brewer is my name, and my picture's on it. So look for the black face, because there are some non-melanated blessed.
And I'm the only one, so there you go.
Thank you all so much for this amazing conversation, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You all.
Bye.